Good morning, people. Today we're going to talk about a country called Maldives. Now, the reason I say that is because the conflict in Maldives has been going on for some time now, but it's only recently that it's come into the eyes of the international world. Why? Because we see greater powers at work. But I don't believe that should be a sole reason why should be interested in a conflict that goes on in a country, regardless. In the past few days, the Maldives have suddenly become the object of international attention. This happened after President Abdullah Yamin's decision to declare a state of emergency, so to counter a coup that was against him. But what appears to be a purely domestic affair affecting only a small region of the country, which counts to around 500,000 citizens, hides in reality a much broader power struggle between two major powers, namely India and China. It's better to proceed with order. The origins of the ongoing crisis date back to February 1, when a ruling by the Maldives Supreme Court ordered to reinstate 12 opposition MPs who had been stripped of their parliamentary seats and dropped convictions against a group of 9 members of the opposition. The court stated that those among them who had been detained had to be freed and the trial had to be repeated. The group also included former President Mohammad Nasheed, the leader of the Maldives Democratic Party, which is currently the main opposition force. He had won the region's first democratic election in 2008 but had to resign in 2012 because of a series of protests against the sacking of a judge. And 1 year later, he ultimately lost a controversial election against the current president, Yamin. Nassim was condemned in 2015 in what largely seen as a politicized ruling, and he has been living in exile in Sri Lanka since the following year. Since 2017, he announced his intention to run in the next presidential election. The recent decision by the Supreme Court declares his trial was unconstitutional. This causes obvious trouble to President Yamin as it allows his main rival to enter again in the region's political process. Moreover, if the 12 PMs were actually restored, he would lose the parliamentary majority in favor of the opposition. As such, after an initially mild reaction, Yamin's government decided to strike back. Justifying the move as a way to counter a coup, he ordered the state of emergency, suspended the parliament, had Chief Justice Abdullah Saeed and another top judge arrested, and detained Maumoon Abdul Gayoom, another former president, and now aligned with the Maldives Democratic Party. Opposition affiliated media was targeted with cyber attacks or blocked, and ultimately the remaining Supreme Court judges were decided to revert the previous ruling. But the situation remains tense, with military expelling some oppositional member of parliaments out of the parliament by force. As such, the political struggle currently sees the Maldives Democratic Party led by Nasheed opposing President Yamin, who is backed by the security forces. But at the moment, it seems that the crisis will result in a de facto victory for President Yamin. In spite of the democratic and international protests, can you really believe that? As a matter of fact, the opposition called his action a purge and called for a foreign support. In fact, Nasheed asked US to impose financial sanctions on Yamin and his outrage. But also socially, he asked India to intervene by sending a military, and he asked them to actually intervene in the wrongdoings that's going on in the country. The reason India isn't intervening right now is because it's playing a waiting game because China has recently invested in the country. And China released a public statement saying India has it's not justified to India to intervene at this point in the current socio-political situation of Maldives. So basically, it's a war of two superpowers in China who want to impose themselves. So the discourse coming from the two is completely clear. India is afraid of China's growing presence and what it considers to be its own sphere of influence, while Beijing accuses New Delhi of political interference in countries that are seeking closer relationships with the Republic of China. The reality is that both of them have relevant interests to pursue in the Maldives and are struggling to ensure their primacy over the country. At this point, it really wouldn't be surprising if China emerged as who did the cyber attacks, or if India were to intervene through the military. Because understand that India has done it in the past. Two, it would be pretty easy to justify it. I mean, they could simply say it's an act to justify and preserve democracy and the rule of law in the islands. As such, what may look like an episode of political turmoil in a remote country has in reality much deeper geopolitical and strategic implications, with two major powers competing for a regional influence among the most important sea lanes of communication in the world. By now, Yamin seems to be gaining the upper hand, but it's really a waiting game. to see what happens in the islands and how things progress. For now, thanks for listening, guys, and hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you.